My studio is my sanctuary, my playroom. It's a place where everything is allowed. Here, I'm able to understand, or better said, to navigate in time-space in my own way. I like to think of my studio as a mixture of laboratory and a mechanics shop, in the sense that there's where I practice my experiments, but it's not as hermetic as a proper lab. I grew up in a textile mill, and as a kid I used to spend most of my time in the mechanics shop playing around with vertical drills, lathes, milling machines. I think that because of that, my studio is arranged somewhat like a mechanics shop. So the space-time characters, they're trapped in this loop, and it's as the more I try to break them free from this loop, it's the opposite. I feel that I'm moving in towards them. I'm coming closer. I'm holding hands, and I'm trapped with them, holding hands in this never-ending loop. I often hear that I'm a good storyteller. We tend to think that every good story must have a hero and a villain. Normally, the villains, as characters, are much more interesting than the heroes. Time is a merciless villain, and it's the villain in the stories of my space-time characters. The concept of space-time is a fairly new idea, about 100 years old. If science still does not have a firm grasp of it, what better way does the common man have to explore it than through art? For over 20 years, I have been dealing with these photographs that I took mostly in downtown São Paulo for an exhibition at the time called Faces of São Paulo. The subject of these photographs were people who had been excluded from our society and were dumped in the non-place. For all of these 20 years, I have been showing these photographs and telling these people's stories, trapping them in space-time. In many ways, somehow, someway, they borrow from me and I borrow from them. And I come to a point where I can't differentiate whether I am them, if they are me, if they ever existed, or if they were but a figment of my imagination. I see my beard getting white, I see my hair falling, I see age hitting me like a cement truck, yet my space-time characters don't seem to age, and nothing changes for them. They are trapped in a loop, trapped in that space between two photograms in a reel of film, immortalized, eternal. My characters are all trapped in this cycle. They are holding hands in a circle, ever moving. As I work with each of these characters, I constantly live the dialectical relation of knowing. Every time I attempt to break this, I see myself closer and closer to them, until I am in the circle, with them, holding hands. I become them, and they become me.
Carla conviene, quale diavolo dunque in cartone? Ebbene, e fareste Madama Butterfly?
Inspiration is not a static thing for me. When I come to the atelier, I don't sit and wait for an idea to come. It comes from all over the place. Walking down the street, from a dream. It's not something that I just sit and wait for it to come. I work and I work. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm working, and from that work, something might come out. Something might come out from an old drawing that I've done, something that I abandoned, and that I remember it, and from that I do something else. And this process of constantly working and bringing into the atelier things from the outside, bringing into the studio things that you see, walking on the street, on a building, or at the beach, something from a dream. And I feel that it starts with one small fragment of an idea that somehow comes to you. And that small fragment will orbit you and continuously for days on end until it's pushing you. It's there. It's always present, and it's forcing you to decide whether to use it or not. And the moment you allow that small fragment to become something, you make a sketch. And from the sketch you make a drawing. From the drawing you already know more or less how you want to take this. This is going to be a painting. This is going to be a sculpture. You might make a few etchings in the process, and from that it unfolds and unfolds and unfolds, and it's never completely done. It's not something that one new idea will overlap with something that you had already considered done, and it's an ongoing process. But it's not something static. It's not something that you sit and wait for it to come. You remember this one?
There you go.
Yeah. So this, we're still talking about the same characters and their reinterpretations. Some of the snapshots of the long place where some of these characters live. There are the small ones and then there are the big ones. The whole sense of preservation, or not preservation, but just delaying decay, trying to preserve from decay, from entropy.
Yeah, I see. So it's like the time to be preserved, something
Yes,
like
with this one. So the whole idea is that this will occupy one wall,
should be.
one full wall.
Yeah, should be. I think so. This is the best way to present.
Now, this is still not my favorite link between me and the space-time characters. I would say that the best link is this one and that one. So they sent us the floor plan of the gallery, and what we need is the elevation of the four walls, basically. So this is more or less what we need: this wall, this wall, this wall, and this wall. It's 4.5 meters tall, and from that we can start scaling the artworks, and this will help set up the show. Brazil is a country that, even if described as an emerging power, is still a third world country, swiped with poverty and lacking basic needs such as education and decent healthcare to the majority of the population. Brazil is a country of extremes: extreme richness and extreme poverty. How can one not be inspired by all that surrounds him? How can we not bring back the oldest memories we have of our childhood when we trigger the right emotions? Every song you ever heard, every story you ever read, every place you've ever visited, these are all stored and they are brought back from latency when called upon. Splinter of an idea. It might come from most of my ideas do not come from within the studio. From a dream, the ideas come to me when I am strolling down the street or looking out of my window. I don't sit and think about what I will do next. It's not a stationary process. on deciding whether to use it or not. At a certain Throughout one's life, one is so influenced by all that one senses that it's very hard to keep a tight seal over an idea and not let it be touched by foreign influences. How can you not be influenced by a piece of music by Villa-Lobos or a text by Garcia Marquez? How can I not be influenced by what molded me as a child or in early adulthood? How can I not be influenced by artists that I so much admire? Being born and raised in Brazil, despite my Lebanese heritage, and choosing to currently live in Lebanon, I must say that my heart is Latin American, or Brazilian to be more specific. For me, it is very hard to define what is art. I feel that art is a process where one uses any form of expression in order to try, and I say try with capital letters, to make some sense of the world that surrounds him, using a line of reasoning allied to criticism and the knowledge acquired in his life experiences. It's even hard for me to justify a final work as art. I sometimes feel that art only happens in the process, or that it's at its most manifest state in the process. It is capable. With that in mind, how can we fight social and cultural prejudice that dwell with us and that is our everyday life? How can we include people, if not by the integrity that visual arts are able to rescue in the individual in its most ample and aggregator perspective? Art humanizes the eye of the spectator. It is capable of proving that we are all equal. Each one of us is a character and an agent in constructing, transforming, recreating, recycling, remodeling, reaffirming, and animating our own personal reality. It all started in photojournalism when I was still very young. Photography had always fascinated me, and as a curious child, photojournalism was the natural way to go. Looking back, my first work of art was done when I was about 18 or 19 years old, and that work consisted of photographing the anonymous, the excluded, the marginal to society, in the hope of bringing them to the manifest. Art had always seemed to me as the perfect language to understand social exclusion. And if you think of it, what other than art can prove to be a better tool for social inclusion? For that project, nothing could have been better than photography. As a printmaker, I see much of photography in the process, especially in mezzotints, where you start with a black canvas, let's say, and you draw using masses of light.
Dice proprio così? Sì, così dice, ma se ad ogni momento